How about Kansas City? There's a lot going on in Kansas City, all right? This episode was in Kansas City. The Chiefs won the Super Bowl. What the hell? Here we go. It's time. Let's get to slide 1. Oh, a special addition to the presentation this week. Artwork from the one and only Amnixia. Look at this. Look at this. Amnixia did this. And they sent me an like a play-by-play on the progression. So cool. 07 Nix. Thank you for the dope art and allowing us to use it in our presentation. All right, so we are talking about episode 5, season 1, episode 5 of The Last of Us. Hold your tears. Hold your tears. We'll get there. It is titled Endure and Survive. All right, so some of the themes I spotted that I watched it twice, 2.5 times. I watched it twice and I scrubbed through it once. Some of the themes I was picking up on: teamwork, seeing oneself and others, perspective change, loss, escalation, and danger. None of these are really unique, like super unique to this episode, but they were prominent, I felt like, you know? So kind of what we'll be focusing on. So we got Sam and Henry. We got the backstory. So in this episode, we get to see how Sam and Henry ended up where we found them in game. We get to see how Henry had affiliation with Fedra. We get to see how their bond was in this real version of the game, this live human version. And Sam being deaf adds, in my mind, so much to the story and made it so much like their relationship and the characters way richer. These actors were incredible. The casting was incredible. But yeah, learning about where they came from a little bit was interesting. It gave a lot of wonderful context to seeing them in the story of Ellie and Joel. There was a lot that kind of made sense at the beginning of this episode. We learned who the doctor was. We learned how he was affiliated with Henry and Sam. I love this quote by him when he's talking to Henry about how they're gonna escape. And Henry tells them, we're going through the tunnels. And he says, tunnels? Why go through the trouble? You can kill yourself right here. I loved it and I hated that quote. It was brutal. I like hated it, but I also loved that they added it. Because it's really like, it's like fucked up foreshadowing, but it's also just like a really believable thing that someone would say. Like, why the fuck would you go to the tunnels? You think you're gonna survive that? We learned that a collaborator is basically a rat. Can't spell collaborator without rat, R-A-T. Collaborator. This dude had a rough day. Medium rough day. They keep using the word collaborator, which is interesting. They just decided to go with that word. That was like what they're using. Kathleen and the Resistance and Henry, and you're a rat, right? You basically went to Fedra and turned people in for protection, for resources, for whatever. But you were basically a rat. You're a Fedra rat. I find this to be something that was like, again, we're in this universe, in this story where no one is really pure good and no one is really pure evil. There's just this giant spectrum of good and evil. We're talking about people, you know, like how Kathleen has these people who are collaborators holed up in this little cell who she ends up killing and burns the bodies and doesn't give a literal fuck about. Those are all people who went to Fedra and ratted people out. So they're bad because they ratted people out, but then you have Kathleen who's like killing people everywhere, but she's doing it because she was wrong. So like, was she good? Is she bad? It's just like this like constant, like there's just no one is 100% good or bad. And when we learn that Henry was a collaborator, that's like really in our face. We don't have the as the viewer, you don't get to be like, oh, whatever. They ratted someone out, they can die. Or they were a collaborator, they could die. Because it's Henry and you're like, oh my God, I'm rooting for this guy. Like, he's clearly just doing what he has to do to protect his brother. His brother needs him, and so he did what he had to do. Does that make him evil? I don't know. You decide. Kathleen's character only gave a fuck about getting back at those who wronged her. She quite literally put the bloater, who they had underground, holed up in a fucking room, like this grumbling giant infected, they probably didn't even know what it was, put that on hold. She was like, I'll get to that later, because I gotta go find this guy who wronged me. She goes, he's not my 7th priority. He should be your 7th priority. He should be your 70th priority. Why do you not care? Her character was so wild. She didn't give a fuck. She did not care about anything besides revenge. She didn't care about her own escape? Is there like even an escape plan? She's just gonna like sit in KC forever and riot the streets forever and hunt down bad people forever. Wild. And then you also saw in Perry's eyes in so many different scenes him being like, is this really worth it? Like, look at yourself, you know? But yeah, she was a wild character. She was wild. Henry and Sam did a perfect job displaying the power of morale and staying positive and how that plays a factor in survival. Another fun theme that they played with that you don't really have a lot of in the game, especially with these two characters. They're in the game and they're out of the game really kind of quick. Their chapters. But you have so many moments with these two where Henry's only goal in that moment is to cheer Sam up. Of course you would want to cheer Sam up. Are you kidding me? Sorry, I'm covering this shot. I'll move it. Sam is just the most pleasant, wonderful, adorable kid of all time. I really like their relationship for a lot of reasons. I like their relationship in game. Their chapter in the game, as you probably know if you watched me play the game, was one of the hardest chapters for me to get through, and the moment was one of the hardest moments for me to get through. I find it hard to watch stories of brothers who go through horrible things in games. It happened to me in like Life is Strange, and it happened to me when I played Last of Us, and it was just really fucking hard. And watching it, I bawled my eyes out, and it was hard again, and it was even harder because they brought so much life to it. There were just a lot of really wonderful moments with these two, and I appreciated all of them. And I knew in the moment that I was like, okay, I have to appreciate this, cause ... So this was interesting. You have Henry kind of peeking through the window when they're about to make their escape plan, and they discover that this whole kink in their plan was Joel and Ellie. Threw a wrench into all of their plans of escaping because they hear these gunshots and they look out the window and they're like, oh fuck. And you get to watch this from a new angle. You get to look across the street, and you watch Joel in the third party cook these dudes. And it sort of looks like Joel like spots him for a second there, which was kind of cool. But it reminded me of in-game, especially in part 2. You just have, they play with the perspectives a lot when you play as different characters, when you watch different chapters. Such a good thing about the way they made Last of Us the game is that they force you to literally be in the shoes of other characters and like watch things from other perspectives. It's like in life when people are like, you have to have empathy, you have to walk a mile in my shoes, you have to see what this looks like for me. Well, okay, here it is. This is what this scene looked like for someone completely different. Just like the game, which I loved. Also just loved seeing the scene from this angle. Really cool and interesting. I don't know. This part made me laugh really hard. He has an asshole voice. Oh shit, I needed this so bad. We needed this, chat. This is perfect. This is perfect. It was just wonderful. It was like everything you could ask for like a tiny little moment of levity in the middle of this. She's like trying to defend Joel and how he sounds sus as fuck, and then she's like, Joel, tell him everything's fine. He's like, everything is great. He says it even more sus. Really good scene, liked it a lot. I also liked the, at the end of the last episode, you see these two dudes. If you've never played the game, you see these two dudes holding guns at Joel and Ellie. You're like, oh, fuck, they must be like the real deal. But then as this scene kind of happens and plays out and they like talk it out, you see how actually scared Henry is. And he's like not comfortable holding a gun to people. And I liked that. I liked how he was very disarming of himself, no pun intended. And I think Joel picked up on that pretty fast. Some of the visuals I picked up on just as I loved the way they looked. I thought the composition was wonderful. This shot of Kathleen is goddamn angelic. I mean, this is what I mean, I actually started to look up like old paintings. I like was Googling like paintings of an angel, or like paintings like old like religious paintings. I don't know. This looks fucking angelic, this shot with the two windows and the way she's standing. Renaissance paintings. Yeah, this one was crazy. Really liked this shot. Really, really cool. I liked seeing them two together up here. I'm blocking it, but this was great. Looking out into landscape of Casey and Death planning their escape. This part was wonderful. We got more range from the joke book. Hearing Sam crack up was like the best noise. All the amazing sound design. Shh, get out of here. I just want to hear Sam laugh. His laugh was so good, and she's just like dying. Oh, this is good. And then you see Henry's reaction. He's just so happy. I loved their recreation of the little soccer moment. Fanfare. Giving us some love. These I did a couple of these just like comparison shots from the game to the show. This was the letter from Ish, and then this is the drawing of Ish, our protectors. Look at me trying to read this letter. Nice. This scene was, again, we're talking about recreating a scene that felt like it was just in game. The sniper scene. Holy shit. Come on, dude. So well done. So well done. I think I might be wrong. I might be a little bit wrong about this, but I think in game, this scene starts at like dusk and then it ends at night. Like the transition of day to night happens throughout the level, I think. Is that right? Because I remember the beginning of the scene being in the daytime and then it sort of ends as it gets dark. But the whole thing in the show is nighttime. They really had to do it to us like that, make the whole scene in the dark. But then when shit really goes down and there's fire everywhere, that's like lighting up the fucking street. So it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't even, Jesus. But the shots of like the close-up shots where it would like show this little top room in this weird little creepy house and the little muzzle flash. I like how Joel also said he had shit aim, which was wonderful because in the game, this sniper is just the worst thing ever. And he's just awful. And I died many times. So some of my favorite visuals from this scene. Kid clicker, something we didn't need. Etched into our brain forever. Old. Yeah, really loved how this scene looked and felt and everything. It was just really f***ing nuts. Okay, so one thing I wanted to note is I haven't listened to the podcast yet. I didn't have time up until stream right now to listen to the podcast, but then I was thinking about it, and I think from now forward I'm gonna save listening to the podcast till after my presentation because I want kind of like my thoughts and breakdowns to just kind of be my own thoughts, and then after I'll kind of fill myself in. I think that would help. But I did watch the like last, after the episode airs, there's like a couple minutes where they like break down some behind the scenes, and they were talking about these actors and they had movement coaches. There was a guy who literally was there to like instruct and teach them their movement, and I found that so interesting. And these actors who were running around and crawling around and mimicking the movements that, you know, the infected have, was really interesting. Like a lot of it being practical was very cool. So I have not listened to the podcast yet. I think as a viewer, regardless of if you played the game or not, you are like, this episode, it changes your mind a little bit about the bad guys. You're like, holy these scary ass infected are moving way too fast for my liking. And they're doing flips. This X Games mode, she flips into the car. This shot of her just like yeeting herself into the car. Bro, I'll try to outrun a zombie, but if they're doing that, like, GG's 07, thank you. Crazy. He's huge. He's huge. He's respectfully massive. He had his moment too. He like climbed out of the hole and he was like, bitch, I'm here. Look at me. Come here, Perry. This was the moment Perry perished. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that. Sorry, this was the moment Kathleen and Perry died. He says to Kathleen, don't look back. Look how scared she is, by the way. In all the shots that we've seen of her and all the scenes where she's just a menace, you never see her scared, and then boom, 1 second shot. She's terrified. Look at her face. Look at her face. She is like freaking out, man. And Perry says, don't look back. And even right here, this wasn't in the game. This whole Resistance kind of like backstory and characters were for the show, and I loved it. But even right here, in this moment, like not up until this moment, but right here, because up until this moment, she's the boss. She's telling everyone what to do. He's like, yes, boss. But in this moment, he becomes the protector. And I might be reaching here, but I just feel like this theme is just everywhere in the story. It's everywhere. You have people who need protection, and you have people who are willing to be their protector. And he says, don't look back. And he says, run, don't look back. And he turns around, and that was that. But, you know, like there was just this little moment that I was like, damn, they like, what? Like even here, like we're supposed to hate these guys. Uncorked, bro, don't. Oh. We're supposed to hate these guys, and they humanize them all in one really quick moment. Also, I noticed, like, if you're new to if you haven't played the game and you're watching the series and you're like, oh, these guys are bad. They're destroying everyone in the city. They're stabbing them 100 times. They're hanging them. They're doing horrible things to like rats and Fedra people. I'm scared of them. And then you see the infected crawl out of that hole and you're like, nope, I'm not scared of them anymore. I'm scared of that. So it's like they have this passing of the guard of the bad guy. The bad guy's one thing, and then the bad guy's something else. And then all of a sudden you're like, how was I scared of the first thing? Because that is way scarier. And the moment they crawl out of that hole at 100 miles an hour, So this scene had me swimming in tears, obviously. But I want to talk about a couple things about it before we finish, because I think they were just like important little details that I wanted to mention. Obviously, this was a really sad but touching and amazing scene that I think they really did a good job bringing to life. Acting was off the charts in this scene. Off the charts. This shot was something else. They cut to this shot twice. This exact shot, they cut to it twice. And it's from Henry's perspective. And the way that they shot this and composed it is... I thought about it for days. I thought about this specific shot for days, how they did it. So many times in movies, in television, when someone gets killed, the aftermath of them getting killed is usually a shot of them just laying there, dead. Right? And that's impactful. You watch this character alive, and then you're now watching this character dead. And as a viewer, that's a very linear way to impact us. But this was so much stronger. They cut to this shot, and he's not in it. He's literally not in the shot. It's an empty frame. There's blood at the bottom of the frame, and he's blurry and barely in the corner. But the subject is gone, dude. Someone erased the subject, and that freaked me out the way they did this. And they cut to it twice. He's just gone. Oh. But even going back to this, this dude has range, man. This dude he's different. He's different. He's got range. The way he went through the emotions on his face somehow was even better than the game Henry. It was like unbelievable range on that guy. So yeah, this shot might have been the most impactful shot of the whole episode. I mean, it's just like the decision that they had to like literally not show anything in this shot, and they cut to it twice, was like, I wouldn't even think to do anything like this. It rocked me. And then we move on, right? Because we have to. Ellie's leading the way now. Joel's sitting there staring at the graves. He's like processing, and she's like, we gotta go. Well, I mean, I love this shot a lot, but you could tell that he's processing this visibly more differently and more intensely than he's allowed us to see him process anything up in, since the death of his daughter. And I think in this moment, this last little sequence, it became pretty clear that it's either they have to survive together or they both die. And this is cutting back to episode 2. Joel walked away from Ellie. She led the way. Sorry, Joel led the way from Ellie, so he left after Tess died. He just walks off. And here you have Ellie doing the same thing. She's like, let's go. And all of a sudden, Joel's left behind, you know, looking from behind. So I loved the way it ended, but I hated it, but I loved it. I hated it. I loved it and I hated it. This was a very difficult episode to watch, but it was beautiful and they did a great job, I thought. I was also curious going into this episode, like what the timetable was going to look like how I had a feeling that it was like the episode 5 was going to be the beginning and the end of Sam and Henry, right? But I was also curious as to like how the resistance would fall. Anyway, that's my presentation. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. GG's. We have a whole week until we get another one.